our next speaker is an absolutely fascinating guy. His name is Sahil Bloom. And what's really unique about Sahil is this guy's multi platform. He's about to hit 1 million followers on Instagram, but what's unique is he has 1 million followers on Twitter, now x.com, and 1 million followers on LinkedIn. These are all extremely distinct platforms with very different audiences, with very different use cases, but Sahil somehow has been able to go cross-platform. But what's even greater about Sahil is he's also really crushing it as an author. Right now, his book is #2 on the New York Times. Congratulations, Sahil. And the book is called The 5 Types of Wealth. It has been on the New York Times for 7 straight weeks. As an author, I can say that is not an easy thing to do. Sahil has absolutely exploded into the world, and people are going nuts for his wisdom and what he represents. So, welcome, Sahil Bloom.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, a couple other things I want to say about you, Sahil. So, he's the best-selling author of The 5 Types of Wealth, a transformative guide to design your dream life. An inspirational writer, content creator, captivates millions through his insights and his bi-weekly newsletter, The Curiosity Chronicle, which has grown to over 900,000 subscribers. That's really impressive. So, email is another medium that you're really crushing.
It's been an interesting journey, to say the least. I'm looking forward to sharing more about the entire experience today.
Well, let's start by how did you get started?
I was working in a very traditional track. I was working at a private equity fund, really like rising through the ranks of a traditional industry. I come from a background with an Indian mother, so taking the job that would impress her and make her feel good about the career path I was on was very important. I'm sure there are some people out there listening that resonate with that idea that there's like the family and kind of cultural pressures to do the normal track, if you will, and stepping off of that to go do something different was very difficult.
Now, by the way, Sahil, so you're Indian, so I get that. Where does the last name Bloom come from?
My father is from his family, I guess, is from the Ukraine. If you go back several generations, but my dad is white, so I'm sort of half and half.
Bloom doesn't sound like a Ukrainian name either, but it's amazing personal branding. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, it is a very unique background, I suppose. And I do think that the combination, sort of the collision of two worlds that I had in my background as an individual was pretty formative in terms of my own journey and my own path. I feel like, my parents' story of how they met, sort of going against their family's wishes to get married and build their life together, and the way that created this ripple effect into my sister and my life of constantly questioning these common
Right.
conventions has been very powerful.
So I'm really curious. Why do you think you're so captivating? What I mean by that is, look, it's not easy to get to 900,000 people on email, then 1 million people on LinkedIn. You are somehow able to do it cross-channel. Most people are on one channel. What is it about your content?
I think there's an element of content, and then there's an element of mindset and just mentality around this. And look, I mean, my fundamental belief, I come from an athletic background. So I played baseball my entire life. I got a scholarship to play baseball in college at Stanford. I was not very talented. Like, if I'm just being completely honest, I was not particularly talented. I was convinced from a young age that it would be impossible to lose if I just kept showing up. And from a young age, I just decided that the way that I was going to stand out in anything that I did was that I was going to show up over and over and over again. And in particular, I have the belief that not every day is created equal. Days when you don't feel like it count 2x. And days when you really don't feel like it count 10x. Because those are the days when you convince yourself, when you instill this identity that you are the type of person that shows up even when you don't feel like it. And at the end of the day, the key to life is showing up. You got to show up when it's messy, show up when it's hard, show up when no one is watching, over and over and over again, even when the rewards are uncertain. And I took that same mindset that I had applied in my athletic career and in my life and in school and applied it to this new thing that I was doing. And, look, for everyone out there that's listening to this, one of the things that really is advantageous to someone when you start marching down the path within the world of social media, within the world of content, within the world of monetizing that, is that creative people, quote unquote, are not very consistent on average. Like, your competition in the world of online creation versus your competition if you were going to go and work in the hedge fund or finance world is dramatically different in terms of their willingness to work hard over long periods of time. That is a great thing for all of you. You're all the type of people who clearly are consistent. You're clearly hardworking because you're on a webinar on a Sunday. Like, that is the type of person that all of you are. And if you can take that and apply it, you are immediately standing out. You're immediately in the top 10% just by being someone who is willing to show up day in, day out over and over again. And so when you ask, like, what made me captivating, clearly I was getting better and better every single rep. I was maniacally focused on how I could improve every single time. I go like if I look back 6 months at any point in my journey over the last 4 or 5 years, I would cringe at the things that my 6 month ago self had created. That feeling of cringe is a sign that you have grown, that you have improved, that you have iterated on your craft and gotten better at it. I have always done that. And so I've pounded my head into a wall consistently over and over and over again, but also gotten smarter with every new insight or piece of data that has come back to me along that journey.
So, when you first started, I'm sure there were some fears, there were some blocks, and we were talking about this earlier with our audience. What blocks or fears did you have to overcome and how?
The number one fear is just the fear of hitting send. Um, I had a piece of advice from a mentor that fundamentally changed my life in this regard, which was 2 words: nobody cares. Um, and that sounds harsh, but that is the reality. You are not afraid of failure. You are not afraid of failure, at least not really. You're afraid of what other people will think of you if you fail. It's the fear of the judgment. It's the fear of the scrutiny. It's the fear of the whispers. It's the fear of the little bits of silence of what they might think or what they might say to you. You are not afraid of actually failing. You're afraid of that. Reality, if you're going to shine a light on that monster, is that those things don't exist because people don't care. When you're winning, people don't care. When you're losing, people don't care. People just don't care. Nobody is looking at you. The spotlight effect is this psychological phenomenon. We all assume that other people are staring at us, that they're noticing our habits, our actions, our behaviors. The reality is that even if they do, they quickly forget about it and move on to something in their own life because we're all too busy thinking about ourselves. So that fear when you're first starting, that fear that holds you back, you don't hit send on the content you created. You shy away from sharing your ideas in a meeting. You don't start until you have the perfect plan for your podcast or for your content. Those fears are all completely made up in your mind. They are a manifestation of the mind, and you can change your mind on that. Recognize that nobody cares. Nobody's watching. If you send a piece of content and it gets 0 likes, by definition, based on how the algorithms work, nobody saw it. And so those fears, we need to shine a light on them, recognize them for what they are, and remember that nobody cares. So that should be empowering. It is not a depressing thought. That's empowering because it reminds you that you need to just continue to hit send on the thing.
I love what you just said. It's very true. We forget that if you put out something that sucks, the algorithms are going to figure it out and they're going to show it to not that many people. So your suckiness is actually being restricted. In that case, the algorithm is totally protecting your ego. Love it. Now, so many entrepreneurs struggle to be consistent. I know I face this. Like, I sometimes go 3 weeks and there's stuff happening, but I'm not posting. I'm not creating because I get busy as a father, as the owner of a business. How do you create consistency?
I would say the number one thing when it comes to consistency is this recognition that every single day is actually easier than most days. And what I mean by that is we have this assumption in our minds that doing something most days is sort of a good starting point for consistency. The reality is that every single day is easier than doing it most days because every single day becomes an identity. Single day becomes who you are as a human being, that you are a consistent person. Where most days it becomes very easy to have those little chinks in the armor, those little dings into your consistency. So every single day, what that means is that you need to figure out a system for doing something every single day. My approach to that is to hold your feet to the fire when it comes to the action, but give yourself grace when it comes to the amount. What I mean by that is hold your feet to the fire to do the thing every single day. Let's say that my thing is writing. I want to make sure I'm putting out content, so I need to write every single day. I'm going to make sure I'm going to hold my feet to the fire when it comes to the action of writing every single day. But I'm going to give myself grace in the amount of that thing that I do, meaning I could spend 2 minutes on writing, and that's better than nothing. I could spend 30 minutes one day, and that's clearly better than nothing. But I'm not going to hold myself to some insane standard and say, oh, I have to write for 2 hours a day in order for this to be optimal. And the reason behind this is a psychological thing, which is ambitious people, all of you that are listening to this, are highly ambitious. You wouldn't be on a webinar on a Sunday if you weren't. Ambitious people are the absolute worst at allowing optimal to get in the way of beneficial. All day we do that. We allow optimal to get in the way of beneficial. We say, I don't have an hour to work out, so I'm just not going to work out. I don't have 2 hours for deep work, so I'm just going to do email instead. I don't have 30 minutes to call my parents, so I'm just not going to call at all. Anything above zero compounds. Remember that. Tattoo that on your body. Anything above zero compounds. 2 minutes of writing is better than 0 minutes of writing. 10 minutes of deep focus work is better than zero. So hold yourself to the fire in terms of doing the thing, but give yourself grace in terms of how much you need to do.
How do you structure your day?
I am very big on knocking out the most important tasks to start the morning, first thing in the day. Anyone who has followed me knows that I'm sort of an early riser, morning person. I get up around 4 a.m. every single day. That's not me not sleeping. I go to bed at about 8. I try to finish my most important creative tasks by 8 a.m. So from like about 4:30 or 5 to 8 is when I'm sort of locked in on whatever my most important creative task is. Reason for that is I know that I'm not creative later in the day. There's too much chaos happening. There's like, I have a son about 3 years old, all sorts of emails, notifications. Your day kind of goes, like if you were to map it, your day kind of goes to hell over the course of a day, just because of the way that stimulus is. There's too much stimulus that builds up as the day goes on. So knocking out your most important thing to start the day is, for me, a tried and true path to actually making sure I get that thing done.
I love that advice. Yes, and also it's great to hear that you have a kid because that makes you so much more relatable to so many of us. I have children as well. My kids are teenagers now. They refuse to go to bed till 11, so I end up staying up with them. But I hear you, Sahil. I get that. Now, I want to ask you about your Instagram, and for those of you who want to check out Sahil's Instagram, go to Sahil Bloom, SahilBloom. Okay, Sahil Bloom. Sahil's at 813K followers right now. And I noticed you're using a really interesting framework here, a consistent style. It looks like old school drawings from Life magazine from the 1950s. So is this a style that you found was working for you?
Yeah, my big thing with all of these platforms is you find something that works, you execute on it, and you need to be adaptable to recognize when it no longer works. And this is applied to every single platform that I've built on. Like Twitter was my first platform, and I was probably the first person that really did threads consistently on Twitter, like the longer form writing. That was an enormous arbitrage opportunity from 2020 when I started until early 2022, maybe, at which point, like any market, the opportunity gets exploited because people see that there's clearly robust growth. The platform is prioritizing the thing. Everyone starts doing it, and then it no longer stands out. It's no longer a structure or a format. That exists at all times on all platforms. There's always something that is working. And your job, if you were going to be a creator consistently, if you want to grow and want to reach more people, is to identify those things. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to create the thing. Sometimes creating the thing ends up being just pure luck. I would say in the case of threads, there was much more luck than it was me actually thinking and identifying it. But you can spot what those things are at different points in time on different platforms. I think the people that opportunistically got into reels early on Instagram, that identified specific trends with those reels, it worked. I would say that within Instagram, there's always these little sort of pockets of opportunity. These images have been working really well for me recently. I don't think they will always work. Like I never
You're constantly
tie myself
experimenting and
to
trying different things.
exactly. I mean,
Okay.
my fundamental belief is that preparation always beats planning. Planning is sort of based on the expectation of order, like the expectation that the seas are going to be calm and that you can
Right.
plan from point A to point B. Preparation is about expecting chaos. Like you expect that there is going to be change, and you need to be adaptable, and you need to prepare for whatever comes. And I think that allowing yourself to be nimble, not getting too tied to a format, not getting too tied to a structure or a style, is really important in the modern day.
So this story about you getting up at 4 a.m. Firstly, you were telling me when I asked you, Sahil, tell me interesting facts about yourself. There was a story that you shared, which I'd love for you to expand upon, about how you bumped into Tim Cook, the famous CEO of Apple, in a gym at 4 a.m., and he ended up becoming a mentor of yours. Tell us about that.
I am big on the idea of expanding your luck surface area, meaning taking actions that expand the opportunity in your life to get lucky, quote unquote. Waking up early and putting yourself into sort of spaces where you might meet interesting people is one of the ways that you do that. This happened in my own life. When I first started my first job, I had to be in the office by about 6:30 in the morning, and I had played baseball at a high level. I wanted to keep up my fitness habit. So I knew if I was going to continue working out, I had to go to the gym at like 4:30 or 4:45 every single day. And so I started showing up to this local gym in Palo Alto where I was working every day at 4:45 in the morning. And at that time of morning, there's only about 5 or 6 people that are crazy enough to show up at the gym every single day at that time. It turned out that one of them was the new CEO at the time, Tim Cook. This is in
Right.
2014. He was not nearly as famous as he is now. He didn't have bodyguards. There was no, pomp and ceremony around him. And we ended up becoming friends. He's been a mentor. He was one of the main people that encouraged me to go leave the path I was on and walk down this new one. He was the first reader of my book. He was the first endorsement
Wow.
on the back cover of the book. He's been an incredible friend and
What was
resource.
the greatest piece of advice you got from Tim Cook? That's worth sharing with our
Lean
audience here.
Yeah, lean into your pattern interrupts. Um, Tim has a very unique story himself that not a lot of people know, which is he was marching down a very traditional path. He was at IBM on this track basically. He was going to be one of the executives, and Steve Jobs looked at his resume while Steve Jobs was recruiting for a role at Apple and saw this like longtime career IBM guy and was like, nah, big company guy, probably not a fit for Apple, and passed. 6 months later, he saw his resume again. But this time, Tim had left IBM to go take a job at this small computer startup called Compaq. And it was kind of weird. It was like Steve was now looking at it. He was like, oh, I thought this guy was a big company guy, but now he's gone and done this really weird thing. He's gone and taken this weird job. Maybe he's not exactly what I thought. Maybe my pattern, the box I had put him in, is not the
Hmm.
right one. So he ended up having a meeting with him, and obviously the rest is history. It ended up sparking this relationship. He brought him in. He's created literally multiple trillions of dollars of value at the company. That is an example of leaning into a pattern interrupt,
Right.
something that makes you different, that makes you stand out. These differences that we all have as people end up being our unique edge. And what I say over and over again with that is the worst thing in the world is not being on a bad path. The worst thing in the world is being on a good path that isn't yours. The bad path screams at you every single day to get off of it. You know, it's abundantly clear you need to make a change in your life. That is the bad path. But the good path that isn't yours is much more difficult to step off because there's so many little pressures trying to hold you, like little
Right.
bits of gravity that are holding you on that path. And so to create the momentum, to tap yourself in, to make a change, to go and try the other thing, to go and lean into that pattern interrupt is a very challenging thing, but can be so rewarding in the long run if you're willing to do it.
So I'd like to ask a question here to the people who are watching, and I'm looking at the chat. How many of you who are here right now are coaches, trainers, therapists, or authors? In short, you're in the business of teaching, of getting information out, getting knowledge out, spreading wisdom. Okay, if you look at the yeses, it's a lot of people.
It's a
So
lot.
it's a lot. My question to you, Sahil, is when you decided to step into being a writer, okay, and getting your first book out, what, how did you leverage social media to grow your audience, grow your reach? Because you did it more effectively than 99% of the writers I know. What did, and I'm sure it was, I'm sure you had the self-doubts, you had the knowledge gaps that everyone else had, but somehow you were able to overcome them. Tell us about that journey. How did social media help you as a writer expand and grow?
Social media was the entire foundation of what I've built. If I were to envision it or like use the metaphor of a house that I was
Hmm.
building, or hopefully a skyscraper, the foundation of that entire thing was built on social media because what I was doing the entirety of the last, I started in May of 2020 on Twitter. Um, I ended up leaning into all of this full time a year later, May of 2021. And since then, so say just under 4 years of doing it really full time, kind of constructively, what I was doing was obviously building an audience, building this
Right.
platform. But more importantly than that, I was refining a skill set and I was testing ideas. Every single day, I was testing and iterating on ideas. What is the storytelling mechanism that really connects with people? What is the approach? What is the angle with this idea that really seems to resonate? All of that then feeds into the places where you were going deeper, which for me was the book. I was going deeper in this book that I was putting out into the world that I've worked on for the last 3 years. So I was able to use as a testing ground this thing with a mass scale audience
Right.
and have a very clear perspective on the types of ideas and the storytelling approach that was going to allow them to connect uniquely. We can all do that with whatever our offer is. Mine happened to be this book that I was putting out. But if it's your coaching, if it's your course, if it's your agency, if it's your business that you're building, whatever it is, you can use social media as like a lab. It's a laboratory experiment where you have immediate access to feedback loops from lots and lots of people that are out there.
So you were basically testing out ideas for your book on social media, and I take it if an idea blew up, it would get a slot in the book. If an idea fell flat, then you would edit it out.
Exactly. I mean, I
Could you
originally
expand on this? Because I
saw.
think this is a really
Yeah.
powerful idea for everyone who's in this field.
Yeah, I remember originally seeing this from James Clear when he talked about atomic habits and how he was like spending time in all of these Reddit and like subreddits to understand what were the things related to habits that people were really questioning, the things that related to habits that people like really seemed to resonate with. And he used that then as like structural items for stuff that he needed to cover in the book. And I was like, look, I can do that every single day with social media and with my newsletter. So I would use social media at the top of the funnel to test the like really short tidbit idea. And then in the newsletter, I would go deeper on the topic that I knew was already resonating with the big audience at the top. I would go deeper on it and say, okay, let me like try to lean into the storytelling here and expand upon it and see if it resonates in this light. I get responses to every single newsletter. They come into my email inbox. I read all of them. That gives me a whole lot of data points.
Wow.
It also gave me millions, not millions, hundreds, thousands probably at this point of stories from real people who were connecting with the ideas in different ways.
Aha.
So now I have
Right.
an even more important data point where I have actual stories from real people, how they are taking an idea and implementing it into their lives. So I can use that to then go expand upon it even more in the book.
So if an idea popped, let's say an idea took off really well in a newsletter, would you then repackage that idea for X and then Instagram and then LinkedIn? Is that how it worked?
I originally used to use X, LinkedIn, and Instagram as the top. and then I would go deeper on ideas within the newsletter.
I see.
Now I have flipped that. I've inverted that system. So newsletter is the first thing that I create. And my whole system that I've tried to set up is so that I can create in the newsletter. And then from there, we can take the ideas that we know resonate and kind of create them across different mediums and different formats so that they can go out on all of the different platforms.
So let's talk about that. So are your newsletters, are they long form, shorter? Is it one idea or
So
multiple ideas?
Right now, I send a Wednesday and a Friday newsletter. Wednesday is longer form on a single topic, and then Friday is 5 different ideas. I am going to split that Friday one into shorter, bite-sized across the 4 days because I think that 5 ideas in one is
Right.
like it's too much to consume, and I want to hit. I want people to take the one idea and then go run with it and take action. And no one really sends a daily self-improvement newsletter too, where you can take like 1 minute and then go
Yeah.
take action on the thing during the day.
So that's a really interesting idea. We're talking about social media here, right, at this summit. But I think most people in the chat underestimate the power of newsletters. And today you can do it with email, you can do it with Substack. I'm just like you, Sahil. The newsletter, I dedicate hours to it every week. That is my primary source. And then the ideas from the newsletter I put on my Instagram and occasionally my LinkedIn. And I just want to urge those of you who are thinking email is dead, email's not a medium, email's only for business, to really consider the newsletter. Sahil has 900,000 subscribers, and his newsletter is free.
Yeah, and I think with newsletters, this applies to all social media as well as newsletters. The number one mistake that I see people make is that they focus too much on extraction and not enough on adding. So everything from the get-go, when you're starting and when you're building, needs to be on how can I add value to other people, whoever my core reader is. For me, I think of my core reader as like a younger version of myself. That doesn't mean that older people don't read my newsletter. My readers range from 12 to 100. But I try to have a lens of like the specific person that I'm writing to. So like, let's say it's my 25-year-old self who was pretty lost and trying to figure different things out in life. I want to make sure that I am adding value to that person with everything I put out. And I'm not going to send it unless I feel like it is truly valuable. That doesn't mean that every single thing you ever post is A plus, but it means that you have a lens to say it better be a B plus or above. Like it better add value to this person's life if they take it. Focusing on adding 10 times as much as you focus on extracting is the path to building longevity as a creator in this landscape of social media. The people that burn out are the people that focus, one-to-one on adding versus extraction, because very quickly your audience figures that out. They're like, oh, I'm just constantly being sold to. I had genuinely not sold anything until this book. Like for 3 years, I didn't do courses. I didn't have paid products. Like I really didn't have anything until I had a $20 book.
Was this your full-time job for those 3 years? How did you survive?
Yes.
But how did you
Well, I
survive?
got paid for the book. So I sold the book. I signed a book deal in 2022, which was a substantive book deal, which was great because I had a platform, so they knew I would be able to sell. The other piece is my newsletter it's free, but it has sponsors. So there's like a sponsor who pay a product or a service somewhere there, so it is monetized.
So an important question there, Sahil. An important question. And by the way, just before we go on, if you want to subscribe to Sahil's newsletter, it's sahilbloom.com. When you go to his website, you will see, you can read about his books. There's a navigation menu that says newsletter. And what's cool about it is you can read the prior newsletters, and then you can also subscribe to get future newsletters, which is really cool, right? You get to explore it first before you give Sahil your email. So there are 6,000 people over here. I hope you get at least 1,000 new subscribers. Now, Sahil, here's the question which I think people are wondering in their head. You decided, at Tim Cook's urging, to quit your day job and go full-time into this field. Take us through that journey, because that can be scary for a lot of people. Because when you quit your day job, how are you surviving? Are you living off your savings? How long before you're able to monetize your newsletter? How long before you could finally make ends meet and not go into debt? And not eat into your savings?
Yeah. So and by the way, I was like working in a very lucrative career path in finance. So it was even more painful in that regard in making a change. Like I really had to be thoughtful about it for that reason. So the first thing that happened was I had, over the course of a year, I was still working in my day job. That was May of 2020 until May of 2021. I was still working my 80 to 100 hour a week finance job. I was doing this writing on Twitter at the time, just on the weekends or early in the morning. I was spending, hours and hours a week doing this and building my platform. I had grown my Twitter following during that year from about zero to like maybe 125,000 by May of 2021. One thing that happened starting in late 2020 was that a bunch of founders of startups that I had invested in, been around, whatever, from my days in finance, started coming to me and saying, we're trying to build our Twitter following because we see the value for fundraising, for customer acquisition, for employee engagement, etc. Can you help us? Do you know how to do it? I did not have a name for what that was at the time, but that was effectively an agency where I was helping them with creating the content. I was helping them, like get reach on the content, structure, hooks, all of those things. I was helping them with that. That had grown into like by mid 2021, like probably 50,000 US dollar a month business because I was charging people $5,000 a month
Wow.
to help them with this. And I had very little team resource. I was just working 120-hour weeks. I mean, I was just working completely nonstop because again, I was still, I had a day job until May of 2021 when I separated. That was like partially enabled by the fact that I did not have a kid at the time. And it was COVID, so I had no social life. So I was able to work 100 plus hour weeks on these two things, which frankly, like that income that was coming in from that thing was what convinced me that like we're not going to starve under a bridge. I know how to make money from this skill that I have now built.
That is amazing. And I think there's a big insight there for everyone who's here. When you get good at social media, you don't just make money from the social media. The wisdom, the knowledge that you gain from being able to grow a LinkedIn or grow an X or grow an Instagram or write a YouTube video, you can monetize that by being a consultant.
Yeah, you can monetize things in any, there's like, there are just a million different ways that you can make money. And I would say that I did not recognize that until I stepped away from the traditional track. Like I basically had the mindset that the only ways to make money were just working on a stable, normal track. I don't have any entrepreneurs in my
Right.
family. My dad's a professor. I had always thought that you take this job that's lucrative and you just stay there for 30, 40 years, and that's how you make money. Once I left, my mind was open to this idea that you can actually make money in a whole lot of different ways. I don't
Hmm.
make money doing that anymore, by the way. Like that thing, that agency,
Right.
like coaching people, there's zero revenue from that. So it was a temporary thing, but it was the thing that convinced me, it shifted my mindset that it's possible to make money in these different ways. Since then, I've been able to grow and start different things that don't require my time, which is much more useful for me so that I can focus on my creative endeavors.
Beautiful, Sahil. Now, how do you tie your newsletter and your social media together? In other words, how do you get fans following you on LinkedIn to join your newsletter and likewise from newsletter to go to LinkedIn? How are you creating that multiplier effect?
It totally depends on the platform. So on Twitter, it used to be the case that it was very easy to shovel people from Twitter over to a newsletter because threads were really effective. And what I would do is I would write a thread. And then at the end of the thread, the last tweet would say,
Right.
if you enjoyed this, I'm going to expand upon this in a newsletter. Sign up here. And so you got people that already read the whole thing, meaning they liked it. Now you're saying, I'm going to go deeper on this exact thing that I already know you liked right here. And you would get people, by the hundred, like by the thousands, if you had a good thread. That is very difficult to do now on Twitter. So I do not convert a whole lot from Twitter anymore. LinkedIn is much, much easier today. And there's great arbitrage with driving people from LinkedIn posts to newsletters. A viral LinkedIn post or a high performing LinkedIn post, you can actually include links in LinkedIn posts without it having this like enormously detrimental effect
I see.
that it has on Twitter. That is really effective in driving people to a newsletter from LinkedIn. The most effective thing with Instagram tends to be like DM automations. If you use like I use something called Pinpoint, there's ManyChat. There's a few of these things that are sort of automations where if people want to opt
Hmm.
in, they can comment a certain word and you can send them a link. And that has been effective for us because you can't include links in posts on Instagram, obviously.
Beautiful. I mean, these are some really powerful tips. Thank you. Okay, how are you leveraging AI to optimize and speed up your business empire?
Very little to date. And this is something that we're trying to figure out more actively. I have not used AI for any writing, not because I'm prideful about it, but because writing is how I think clearly. For me personally, I would not be able to think if about these ideas and articulate them to all of you or share them in any of these ways if I hadn't spent all of the time sort of crawling through the mud to write them. Using AI would actually hurt me in a sense rather than help me. And I actually enjoy the writing, so I don't have a desire to sort of
Right.
like outsource that to something else. We, as an ecosystem, use AI for a lot of the image generation, especially now with the new tools that are coming. I think we'll use it more and more to accelerate that. Um, I'm sure video editors are using it more and more for some of the videos we're putting out. I occasionally use it as a brainstorming partner. If I'm trying to like hammer out an idea and I really want to like get pressure tested on it, like tell me the anti-argument to the thing that I'm saying so that I can kind of have like a intellectual sparring partner
Right.
effectively. But I would say we are at probably like 5% optimization in terms of using all of the different tools that are
No,
out
that's
there.
great. That's refreshing. All my books were written with zero AI. I use AI as a brainstorming partner, just like you. So in our final 4 minutes that we have, do you have any closing words for the audience?
I there's a question that I ask in my book that I would love to leave people with. And the question is as follows. If you were the main character in a movie of your life, what would the audience be screaming at you to do right now? We've all been there watching a movie or a television show, and we just want to jump through the screen and shake the main character and tell them, like, chase the girl to the airport, or like, don't go down in the basement, or look behind you, whatever that thing is. You are that main character in the movie of your life.
Right.
And there is something that the audience would be screaming at you right now. There is something blindingly obvious from the outside looking in that you are either choosing to ignore or have yet to create the perspective in order to be able to see. So, what is that thing in your life? What is the thing that you are choosing to ignore? Go think about that. Sit with it for the next few days, and then go take one tiny action to move forward against that idea. If you do that, I guarantee that could be the spark that changes your whole life.
Sahil, I love that. What a freakishly powerful question. I'm laughing because I know what the audience would be rooting for me to do, and I'm not doing it because I'm afraid. But I love that. That's an incredible question. And I think, and I'm looking from the response in the chat, the claps and the hearts and the emojis, and people saying, wow, that was insightful. Amazing. You really, really, really connected to people with that question. Thank you, Sahil. So,
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
thank you, Sahil. We'll wrap up here. It's been great getting to know you and having you on the Mindvalley Social Media Summit. So, back to our audience. How are things going for you so far? I bet many of you didn't even consider email as a medium for building an audience, but as you learned from Sahil, it is a truly powerful medium. I mean, Sahil has 900,000 subscribers. Here at Mindvalley, we are about at 2 million subscribers. And every time I write my email newsletter, it goes out to about 1 million people. And I find that right now, because remember, I was a author before I got on social media, I find that writing newsletters is really my favorite form of content creation right now. It used to be video. I'm just so much in love with my newsletter right now. So you know how to sign up for Sahil's newsletter. You can sign up for the Mindvalley newsletter by going to mindvalley.com. And there's a link there where you can subscribe to my Transformational Tuesday newsletter.